Welcome to Faith Works Live. Here's your host, Rebecca Haney.
It's a good day. I'm glad you're here. This is Faith Works Live, and it's always a good day because between you, me, and the microphone, I love this. This is so much fun to get a chance to talk about life, about what it looks like to live out faith in a wonderful, loving, perfectly just, and abundantly merciful God in this day and age, where if there's two things I think we need a little bit more of in this world, it's justice and mercy. That would be on my list. Need a little bit more truth, and I would say a little bit more courage. And our guest, we were just talking before we get to go on the air, and I don't know, I always think the little off the air conversations, the behind the scenes, if you will, are so fascinating. And many times I kick myself for not hitting the record button a little bit sooner because our conversations are so awesome. But Emily is joining us today. Emily Davis has been on the show in the past. She's with the Susan B. Anthony Foundation. Specifically, remind me, Emily, what branch you are the Director of Communications for? Is it Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life across America?
Yeah, I'm the VP, Vice President of Comms for Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America. That's right.
America. All right. Awesome. I'm glad you put all of those. I just posted a funny meme about punctuation, and it was all the apostrophes all at once. And like, I'm a little bit of a grammar nerd about that, but certain things, I want everybody's title to be correct. I want to do it right. And if I can't, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Well, Rebecca, my mom's a copy editor. My sister's a writer and copy editor. So, you gotta.
Editors.
I got that really.
People don't realize the value of editors. Like if you put a sign on your building, you have to make sure that you put the apostrophe in the right place. I'm just saying, like, it's worth the extra 5 minutes. Find a friend who knows how to read, and it will help you out.
Phone a friend. That's right.
Phone a friend. I need it for that $1 million question.
Or in my case, phone a mom.
Yes. Exactly. It's great to have you back on the show. We love talking life with you. And there's a lot to talk about, especially in the political realm. And I know that's your jam, is kind of that intersection between what we believe, what we know to be true about life, and then how to live that out in the public sphere. We talk about that quite a bit on this show. So you're among friends, outspoken friends on our platform. And lo and behold, probably the biggest platform in the world right now is the presidential race.
Sure.
And in 2024, one of the main issues, really, as much as the Republicans seem to want to downplay it lately, has been abortion. And the Democrats are far from running from their extreme views, because I think last time you were on, we talked about how extreme Democrats have been about abortion. Kamala Harris is literally campaigning at Planned Parenthood clinics, at abortion centers, to talk about how central this is. And I guess cards on the table, at least they're being honest. At least they're being honest and out there. But then the response from the Republicans has been, shall we just say, a mixed bag. And we were talking a bit about how I got to ask Donald Trump a question about this, about what his plans were on protecting life. And he gave me quite a long answer. And I won't play it here, but it seems like he may have changed his views a little bit here more recently. And I have to say, I was disappointed with the direction that his campaign is going. And I know you were as well, but you're willing to speak out about this. A lot of pro-lifers, voters, leaders of these big groups are kind of like, okay, well, what now? Because Donald Trump's latest stance on this, and this is now his official campaign stance, is basically, we overturned Roe v. Wade. Yay, hooray, applause, applause. Very, very good. All around, very good. But now it's in the hands of the states, and there's nothing more that we can do, basically taking it off the table, more or less, in the federal election. Let's just let all the states do what they want to do and be done with it. 10th Amendment. And I, as a pro-life, both voter, advocate, someone that really deeply cares about the morality of this, I call this the number one social justice issue of our time, perhaps any other time as well. The reason that I'm in this fight, I call that a bit of a betrayal. I mean, more than a bit. Let's just not mince words. I call that a betrayal. I think that is the exact opposite direction that we should be going. But you are probably far more diplomatic than I am. So let's hear when you saw that, when you are being asked now to respond to that, what do you say?
Well, you're right. I mean, we didn't mince words either. We were very clear. We're deeply disappointed. It was incredibly disappointing because we had seen him really mull over this and go back and forth. And he even came out on multiple talk shows or the Sunday shows saying, I'm going to look at a national standard. I'm going to look at national protections. I recognize that there's polling that shows that Americans don't want the extremism of Biden-Harris agenda. So we can look at really having states have pro-life protections, but also a federal role here to protect and get rid of the scourge of late-term abortion. And you saw him really lay that out. And then he came out and said, no, I don't see a federal role at all. I don't see any national protections. It's just states rights only. But then the very next day, for him to disparage the different laws, talking about Florida, Arizona, some of these. So it really is not only disheartening, but also not great or politically helpful in any way to disparage different pro-life laws in states. And in fact, for us, we see it as, the opportunity that you could have to call out Biden, Harris, and their extremism, because you're right, they're just campaigning on abortion pretty much full throttle, full thing. All of your energy with the media, all of your time, if you're going to talk about this issue, should be exposing them to the American people and holding them accountable, because they're so slippery. The media is not going to do it. In fact, I'll tell you what, today I saw a headline said Biden was laughing when he was asked what restrictions he would put on abortion, because he said that's a trap from the Republicans. I don't have to answer that. And he's kind of right. He doesn't have to answer because no one's going to hold him accountable. That's why people like former President Trump or other GOP officials, they should be calling this out, because the news will cover them. And they do get the headlines and they do get the video, like the unfettered video coming out. But if we talk about it, we try, but they just try to tune us out. So we've really, really got to make sure that we're not disparaging pro-lifers across the country or disparaging pro-life protections for babies in the womb, but making sure to call out the extremism of the other side that's advancing either through ballot initiatives. And I'll tell you another thing too, that's really just politically frustrating, is that the Democrats, they have their federal strategy on lock.
Yeah.
They definitely see a federal role for abortion at any time, for any reason. They're really not making any qualms about that. I mean, Biden says restore Roe, but when you actually look at the legislation under the so-called Women's Health Protection Act, absolutely even goes further than Roe. It doesn't even acknowledge that there's an unborn child.
Right.
It's like, there's a woman, there's absolutely no child there. And it will strip every single state's rights. It will strip every single pro-life law that the states have put in since the Dobbs decision. So my political question back to the states' rights crowd is, look, I understand. I'm a states' rights kind of person. I love it. But what are you going to do in opposition to the Biden-Harris admin with this federal strategy that they have? They're already saying that the Dems want to nuke the filibuster or pack the court. And this is one of their top agenda items that they want to ram through. Yeah. So what are we going to do from a political standpoint to make sure that we are preserving these laws to serve moms and to save babies? It's a massive question that I haven't really heard an answer to.
Yeah. And it's foolish to ignore it. I think you're absolutely right to point it out, that as much as you want to claim it's a states' rights kind of thing, and again, it's political posturing in my mind, having seen a few of these go arounds. They believe that abortion, meaning the GOP candidate, like GOP strategists, are saying, well, this must be a losing issue. The Democrats are hitting us on abortion. We don't really want to take it there. We don't think that we can, either successfully defend it, or they just believe, I think, the lie that's out there, that there aren't enough pro-life voters to push them over the top, that it'll be pro-abortionists that will be more successful in that trade-off. And so they want to get it. They don't want Trump to be attacked on this anymore. So they're saying, okay, we'll just leave it to the states and that'll be fine. The problem is that the Democrats have absolutely nationalized the issue, exactly as you're saying. They have said from the beginning they want to codify Roe. Ever since the Dobbs decision, we're going to codify Roe at the national level. They are pushing this. So it's already a national issue. I mean, not to mention the moral side of the question, which is
Right.
what do you it's all well and good to say, well, all the states should handle this, should prosecute as they see fit, until we're talking about human lives. A child is no less a human being in California than in Iowa or Florida or Georgia or Texas or New York. And because that we're talking about real human beings, this has to be dealt with. We have to understand the truth of this, and we cannot rest with a situation where it's like, well, okay, because of a state line, that child is protected, or that child is, so much refuse just to be dealt with, however, according to the whims of the mother or whatever that might be. I think we have to understand the inconsistency of that. We, at some basic level, everyone understands how right, or that this is a question of right and wrong. And it's not as something as simple as a tax rate or a trade issue between states. We're talking about human beings. And the last time we punted on a question of humanity, of human dignity and human personhood, and said, well, let every state decide what they want to do on their own, that was the question of slavery. That was the question that drove our nation to the bloodiest civil war that had been seen up until that time in history. And it was an unavoidable consequence of compromise when it comes to human dignity, humanity. It couldn't be put off any longer. And there were lots of people that tried to compromise on this. I do think that the equation is apt, the illusion is apt, because we're talking about nothing less than human dignity, human personhood, human rights, because we're talking about people. And we cannot just allow that to say, well, because of our political strategy, that we're so much smarter than everything is. We've seen this type of thing before. And I am afraid that we will end up in that type of situation again when it comes to the most innocent, the most vulnerable, the most in need of protection. So I guess all of this to result in an actual question for you, Emily. Those are my feelings way out on the table. I don't think that we should make any bones about this. And yet now pro-lifers find ourselves in this position where we have one side that is openly advocating abortion, like you said, full throttle, unrestricted, extreme. I mean, you've even had some high-profile Democrats say things like, well, we really shouldn't help survivors of abortion. We shouldn't help children who are screaming for their lives as the product of botched abortions, that they shouldn't even be given palliative care. They shouldn't even be given the option to survive. I mean, that is barbaric. That is monstrous. And so you have that kind of extreme, and then you have the top of the Republican ticket that basically says, I've done my work here is done. Like, I'm really not going to speak into that. I guess it's even more than that, though, because he is now criticizing states that do seek. We saw in Arizona, very in prominence here recently, that he's criticizing the state of Arizona, saying they went too far by seeking to uphold the actual law on their books that said we're going to protect all children, and criticizing places where I live in Iowa, where our governor has fought hard for heartbeat restrictions. And so it's more than just leave it to the states, because he's not just leaving it to the states. But even if we just take it at face value, pro-lifers are left wondering, well, what do we do now?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I just think that we have to recognize what you were saying earlier. These are human rights. They go beyond states' rights. I say this is not a public library to be put in or a pothole to be mended. There is a difference here. No one's saying states' rights aren't effective or federalism isn't a correct course, but we are talking about human rights. This is a very unique issue to our country. And also another thing that I have to point out is that I find the left and pro-abortion supporters, activists are very successful at even getting the GOP or even conservatives to believe this lie that women are empowered by abortion. This is their top choice, which just a few decades ago, 20 years ago, they would have never said that. They even acknowledged that this was tragic, quote unquote, safe, legal, and rare. And I can tell you, as someone that has been through it, I've had 2 unplanned pregnancies by the age of 22. I talk to women every week. That is not the correct landscape of abortion in America today. In fact, 96.7% of abortions are for reasons that are financial or emotional. These are non-emergency type of cases that they always talk about one type of case of an abortion, but really across America, it's really these elective abortions. And you have women saying, there was a study that came out last year that said 2/3 of women who aborted were either forced, coerced, or it was inconsistent with their values. These are women that are looking for a lifeline. And my question for Democrats or even the GOP is, what is the economic plan? What is the plan of hope for these women and their children? Because all they are hearing right now from the Biden-Harris administration is, you can't do it if you get pregnant in a pro-life state, and you may die, is the message they're getting. So they are literally having to fearmonger and lie to women to claw back votes in their desperation. And those claims cannot go unanswered from our side, from either pro-lifers or conservatives who take up this cause. It's not only detrimental, but dangerous to obviously the child and the woman.
Yeah. And you hear that all the time. That's the implicit when we look at the polls, for example, that show on this issue that, Democrats are way ahead, Republicans are losing. That almost always breaks down into single women. Single women have been told a lie for generations now that you really can't do it. That pregnancy is the death of your dreams. And so the death of your child is the sacrifice that you have to pay. Basically, your baby can't be here because you can't finish your degree. You can't get that promotion. You can't do this. You'll be out on the street. You don't want that, do you? And we then expect to force another person, your own child, to have to pay that price. But it's all based on a lie. That's the thing. And then if women are actually supported, and that's what I've been fighting for a long time, is that whether it's the community, the family, the church, rallying around women and young men in that situation, because they're on the other side of the equation too. And usually they aren't given the opportunity to speak into this, because that's the other side of the enemy's lie, is that if you don't have a uterus, you can't have an opinion. All those sloganeering, protest signs that we see that we like to lob at men who actually want to stand up for the rights of the baby in the womb, who want to be empowered to have a voice into their child's future or their grandchild's future, as the case may be. And we, as the church, as society at large, have to stop allowing those lies to pervade, to make us so afraid that we're willing to sacrifice our own future and our children's lives. I mean, I was looking at, again, just the population rate, since we're going down this little trail. Come with me, won't you? That the population rates are continuing to decline at such a dangerous level that the West is really in a demographic, it's headed for demographic winter. We're not replacing our own population. And there are people that look at that and say, good, because people are the problem. Don't you know that we're the bane on Mother Earth, and that we all just need to basically be thinning the herd, so to speak? And it's language that we've heard before. It's chilling when you stop to listen to that, but it's coming from very high profile people, from the elites of the world. Rebecca, and it's very much in the realm of what Margaret Sanger and the eugenicists would have said about 100 years ago.
Yeah, I would argue that is the origin of abortion in America, that eugenist type of language that you saw. And there was a very targeted group of people that they went after, and there is a very targeted approach and rationale that they use. And when you find people who are pro-abortion that are being very clear and honest with you, they will come out and say this. I mean, we saw that with Bill Maher recently when he was on his show talking about it. What I also equally find offensive is when people they hold this truth inside, false truth inside their heart, but they will not acknowledge it. It's kind of like a child in the womb. They won't even acknowledge that there's a child there, but they will fight you tooth and nail about abortion. And it's like, well, let's define our terms here and let's actually operate on facts and truth. And then we can have this discussion. You put your side out and I'll put mine. But the thing is, when we bring forward the truth, it's almost impossible for them to compete with what we have to offer, because women do not want this when you ask them on the ground. And also, there is a child, a human life that has been formed, that is growing. And we all know this to be true. It's just an inconvenient truth.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you mentioned, Bill Maher, let's see, I know we have the clip, so I'll just I will pause and put it here for anyone that hasn't heard it yet. It's shocking and it's not like, again, points for honesty. Very rarely do you hear leftists, and Bill's kind of like that classic liberal, but at the same time, he's open about the fact that this is a real human life that we're talking about. Abortion is actually murder because you're intentionally killing an innocent human life, and he's just okay with it.
The idea that you're fighting an election around this issue seems to be, just strange. Back to the 19th century.
Well, not if you believe it's murder. That's why I don't understand the 15-week thing. Or Trump's plan is, let's leave it to the states. You mean, so killing babies is okay in some states? Like, I can respect the absolutist position. I really can. I scold the left on when they say, oh, you know what? They just hate women. People who aren't pro-life, pro-choice. They don't hate women. They just made that up. They think it's murder. And it kind of is. I'm just okay with that. I am. I mean, there's 8 billion people in the world. I'm sorry, we won't miss you. That's my position on it.
Yeah, I wrote about this recently in an op-ed, and I said, you know what? As terrifying as his justification and language is, I am equally, if not more, terrified by the people that use euphemisms like reproductive justice or reproductive freedom to try and cloak their agenda, their push of abortion on demand. I think that we should be equally, if not more, scared of people that are trying to do that.
And if we can at least have an honest debate, if we're all, again, I think we have this cognitive dissonance in our culture. You see those man on the street interviews, or woman on the street, as the case may be, human on the street. And you ask people these questions like, hey, if a man attacks a pregnant woman and kills the child within her, is he guilty of homicide? Yes, of course, inescapably so. If you have a man who basically slips his girlfriend the abortion pill without her knowledge and she loses her baby because of it, is that man guilty of homicide? Yes, we understand that to be true. So why then, if that same woman is going into an abortion clinic to take the pill of her own free, that same quote unquote medication, chemicals, those same drugs, of her own volition, and then kill her own child, then what? Isn't that murder? And then you get the hemming and the hawing and the justification. Well, she would know if she really wanted to be pregnant. And the cognitive dissonance, the hypocrisy that's there is blatantly obvious. It's, again, barbaric and monstrous to say, okay, go kill a baby. That should be allowable by law, but at least it's honest. At least we understand that we're talking on level playing fields now. If everyone can acknowledge the truth, that is, yes, the child in the womb is fully human and worthy of protection. Therefore, what rights should that human have? We can acknowledge, okay, the unborn, the preborn, they are human, inescapably so. And one side says we should protect those human beings, so the other side says, no, it's okay. They could be disposable in some circumstances. So then at least we can have an honest debate, Bill Maher. I'm on it. If Emily, you and I come along on one side, we could have Bill on the other side. We could just have this debate.
Absolutely. I say put all the facts out on the table. That's why I'm willing to talk to anybody. You put what you propose to be true about this situation, and I'll put the facts and the truth and the science, because I can tell you right now, the science is going in one direction, and we see that. Ultrasound technology, all of the things that we have now, anesthesia for the child in the womb when there's fetal surgeries, it's all going in the pro-life direction. So essentially, they have become science deniers now of this entire situation.
Yeah. And just getting a chance to talk with someone like Ben Carson, for example, who has operated on children in utero and saved their lives, and brain surgery on preborn children, like it's inescapable. Their humanity is inescapable. I was glad to see the effort for what we have, what we call the Baby Olivia bill here in our state. I was glad to see the effort, which is a very well produced video based only on the science of human development in the womb, and the attempt was to have that be required viewing for kids in middle school and then eventually high school. And unfortunately, that did not pass in our state house. It was sort of scuttled at the last minute by a Republican-led legislature. I was very sad to see that. But that's what happens when I left town for my sister's wedding. Like, I couldn't keep an eye on my representatives. I'm sure they knew I was out of town, and they said, okay, well, we're just gonna no, of course not. Of course not. I don't have that kind of power. But I was upset to see that didn't pass. But something like that, where it's just pure education. Our children deserve to know. Students deserve to know, especially as they're being shoved into sex education classes sponsored by, in many cases, the curriculum by Planned Parenthood, that we're talking about real humanity and the human development in the womb. I know that's a bit of a rabbit trail, but I'm famous for those. So getting back on the topic, Emily, of where do we go from here and what we should be expecting from our leadership. I was asked by CNN to respond to this when Trump made that statement. And I was disappointed, obviously. Like, there's no strong, I guess for a mom, that's about the strongest emotion I can put out there. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed in you. I do consider this to be a betrayal. I do think Donald Trump should know better, really, or should be more convicted. Apparently he's not. He thought this was the best position for him to take on this. I say that's wrong. But now we're faced with these types of choices. I know that every pro-lifer should be speaking out and should be very vocal about why this is so important to get right. I guess the thing that is disheartening to me is when I start to see people who I know are convicted on this issue start to justify things like, well, we just can't do anymore, and maybe this all should just be left up to the states. And it's giving up in many cases, just kind of a shoulder shrug and saying, all right, well, I guess we did all we could, and this is the best that we can do. And I don't think one of my friends said, what we have to tolerate, we don't have to justify in politics. And I thought that there was a great deal of wisdom there, that we should not be surrendering on the most important moral issue of our time simply because of this political milieu that we find ourselves in. And I do think that we should speak with clarity now more than ever, and hold our elected officials to account on this. Since they know better, we expect them to do better. But what do you say in terms of action steps and how people can progress, can make progress and move forward on the issues of life, operating in integrity, even if we're super disappointed in our leaders or our options?
Well, we certainly need to vote, and we need to educate ourselves. And if you're in a state that has a ballot, an abortion ballot initiative coming up, I definitely encourage you to look into the information, understand what this ballot is going to mean, and get out there to educate people. These ballots are being funded by Planned Parenthood, ACLU, and like we saw in Florida, that one's going to strip parental consent for abortion. So just get the word out and make sure that you're educated, and bring people along who can also vote alongside you. I mean, we really need to mobilize the pro-life effort. It's a beautiful thing. It has always been a grassroots across this country. It's not like the abortion side. That's a business. That's an industry that's based off of profiting off of women's sorrows and the misery of children, and getting that money. So we really need to make sure that we are vocal. We are educating ourselves on the ballot initiatives. Also, we are working across different battleground states. We are knocking on millions of doors to talk to people, to educate them about their Senate candidates. We're really looking to the Senate as a place with some of these really contentious races to make sure that we are educating the public on where their senators and House representatives stand on life. And then just don't give up the fight for national protections. I would say a lot of people are just really confused about states' rights, national protections. The Dobbs decision, without a doubt, clearly stated that this goes back, the Supreme Court took their thumb off of life and gave it back to the people to vote in elected officials, not just state officials, elected officials. That's a beauty that we have as Americans. We get to vote in all kinds of elected officials. And so this is a human rights issue of our time. It should be permeated through everything that we do in our vote. And just make sure to educate yourself. And we are asking senators and different representatives to operate with the 3 C's of being clear on where you are as a pro-lifer, compassionate, and drive the contrast from the other side. Do not make each other the enemies, make sure to point out what the other side is wanting here, because I guarantee once that's exposed, people will understand at a deeper level that that is not in line with our American values. So many people don't realize that we are 1 in 7 countries on the globe that has abortion, elective abortion past 20 weeks. That puts us in the same category as half the communist countries in this world. It is not the right way to serve humanity. So we have really got to make sure that people understand that we're a global outlier here. We need some national protections for the unborn.
And I would say that accountability has to be a part of that as well. So when you have legislators that will tell you, hey, I'm pro-life, but then they, vote the wrong way or fail to stand up on these issues, that's what the primary process is for. I mean, to be quite honest, I'm a big fan of the primary process. I'm a big fan of developing relationships with these people who are your employees as your representatives too, so that you can, take them out. Sometimes you can take them out to coffee. Not in my state. They're allowed to have like $3 worth, like you could pay for maybe I don't know, a bottle of water for a representative, just so they know they're not being bribed. That's a fun little point. So I'm glad that Iowa has that. But you can just go meet them down at the State House, shake their hand and say, hey, I appreciate that you're taking your time to stand for us here. This is the most important thing. The protection for life is the most important thing. And I don't care how conservative you claim to be. Our tax rates don't matter if we're killing our own children. Like if we don't have protection for our most vulnerable, then we really don't have guaranteed rights for any of us, really. We're all just one majority vote away from being the latest on the list of undesirables that is no longer protected. I think that's something that resonates so strongly with me because we've seen it happen when you lose respect for the integrity and the sanctity of human life. If even one life is deemed invaluable, if one life is betrayed, right? If one life is said, oh, okay, well, I guess, they're not worth it, then no life is really sacred. And no life is truly protected. So it's a fight that all of us should be invested in. I think that I wish to encourage people, if you listen this far in the conversation, you probably care, you're probably passionate about this as well. And I've heard from a lot of folks saying, well, what do we do? And accountability is a big part of that. We have to be unified in our message. That is, that our cry was not just to, let's tackle Roe. And now that Roe's done, I guess our work here is never at any pro-life event or at any, ministry that I've been a part of has that ever been the end goal. The end goal has always been the protection and the value of each and every human life made in the image of God, and the recognition of that across all 50 states, understanding that. And we talk about changing hearts and minds all the time. That's not to say changing hearts so that, we can vote once a year or once every 4 years and then we're good. Check it off the list. No, it's in everything that we do. We should be respecting and honoring and dignifying one another as human beings made in the image of God, and not allowing that to be taken away from any individual while we live. That's how we have life and liberty in our nation, and for the posterity that our founders worked so hard to protect. Emily, I hope this has been encouraging to people. Any words of encouragement that you have to give to folks who are looking at this and maybe kind of disheartened by the coming election, or feeling like, this isn't going the direction I want it to go. What do we do? Maybe we should just go back to the homestead and forget all about this. Because I tell you, an Amish existence looks pretty good for me from time to time. I'm not good with chickens, but other than that, I like the homeschool homestead idea an awful lot. This is the thing, though, that just keeps dragging me back in and saying we have to stand up. This issue, this moment, we have to step up for those who cannot speak for themselves. So that's where my heart is, to lay it out on the table. But what would you say to encourage people who are listening to this conversation right now, that that their voice still matters, that they can still make an impact?
I would say that, it took 50 years for Roe v. Wade. I mean, the pro-life cause is one that is enduring. And that is the most important thing to remember. Do not just lay down the fight. Right now, we have a real opportunity, and you'll never hear this on the news, but before Roe, we could hardly pass any meaningful legislation. Now you have 24 states in this country that protect children in the womb at 12 weeks or earlier. I mean, that's amazing. They're never going to talk about that. We can still continue to do more. Like you said, the fight is not over. The goal was not to just, say, oh, we're done here. No, we want to protect life and we want to serve moms and save babies. And that's what we're doing. So just everyone, don't grow weary in this fight and recognize that you have a lot of power through your vote. And so let's get out and vote our values.
Emily Davis has been our special guest. She is with Susan B. Anthony, Pro-Life America. She's the VP of Comms over there. And it was wonderful to have you back on the show. You're welcome anytime. If you're in Iowa, because you're not an elected official, I can buy you a cup of coffee. So we'll have it. It'll be great. Thanks for the work that you do and keep standing for life. Help us to continue taking this issue forward. And one of the things I mentioned, those interviews that I did, not to like toot my own horn or anything, but just because anytime I have that opportunity, I pray that it will be used, that I will use it well. I pray that this will drive the conversation, that those who are in power are all too eager to just, count up the votes and tally the victory and the dollars and move forward. And typically they're not nearly as passionate as I am about things like life, about the moral issues and the moral future of our country. And so we have to continue making this a top priority for our elected representatives. If it's top in our hearts and in our minds, then that's, part of the instruction that we give to our employees here in America. So that's part of using our citizenship, I think, biblically and faithfully for my fellow believers. That's a big part of our mission. And that's how we wrap it up here on the show. Our mission is to love God, to serve people, and to live free. Until next time, this is FaithWorks Live. Hey, what's for dinner? If you're like me, I hear that 15 times a day. And fortunately, I have a plan. It's typically Animus beef at our house. We are such big fans of Animus beef at the Haney home because it's just great quality beef. There's no steroids or antibiotics. It's naturally raised butcher beef. They sell by the quarter, the half, or the whole, and they support your local meat lockers so they can help you get it processed in a way that works for you. In this economy, it's good to have affordable options for your meat. And if you're willing to make a good investment in your nutrition for a healthy menu plan, I highly recommend Animus Beef. Contact Dave and Mary Lynn at animusbeef.com. They welcome your questions. They'll help get you on the schedule. They have locker dates coming up. Don't wait. Secure your locker date today. Go to animusbeef.com. That's OHNEMUS beef.com. In today's world, security has never been more vital. And at FaithWorks Live, we're proud to partner with VeriGuard Security. It's a professional physical security service, and they're really raising the bar in security and private investigations. Whether you need a team of professional officers to protect what you have worked hard to build, or their mobile security units for multiple properties or large locations, from business or corporate properties to your home or neighborhood. Perhaps you've got an event coming up. They secure quality security coverage for events large and small because it's about peace of mind and protecting you, your family, your team, and your property. Settle for nothing less than the best when it comes to your security. You shouldn't have to compromise. When it comes to security, you can trust VeriGuard. Contact them today at veriguard.us. That's VARA guard.us. For security service, you can trust VeriGuard. If you've ever wondered what love looks like, check out Agape Pregnancy Resource Center. They offer free services to help women make informed decisions and prepare for their futures. In particular, in a situation of an unplanned pregnancy, women need to know that the truth about their bodies. They need to know the truth about their babies and all of their options. And they'll find that at Agape Pregnancy Resource Center. Go to agapedsm.com and find ways that you can get involved in this amazing ministry, whether it's free pregnancy testing, STD testing, free ultrasounds and counseling, not to mention practical resources, hygiene items, parenting classes, just the list goes on. They change lives. This is a place that truly helps
people. And if you care about the women in our community, check out agapedsm.com and click on Get Involved today.
When a woman faces an unplanned pregnancy, every possible emotion goes through her head. Where can she go for help and for hope? She can go to Intervisions. Here in our metro, we have 2 healthcare clinics where she will find hope and help. From free pregnancy testing and STD testing to free ultrasounds, Intervision serves women and men with STDs who find themselves in vulnerable situations. They're completely free of charge because of generous donations from folks like you. And their medical clinics help their patients get all the information that they deserve that empowers them to make life-affirming decisions. That's what they do at Intervisions Healthcare Clinics right here in Des Moines. Learn more at intervisionshealthcare.org. That's intervisionshealthcare.org. And you can call 24 hours a day at 515-440-CARE. That's 515-440-2273. There's no better time than now to stand for life, and you can stand with Iowa's original pro-life organization, Pulse for Life. They're the longest-standing nonprofit pro-life organization in Iowa, and they are dedicated to informing, educating, and inspiring a new generation to value the sanctity of all human life, from fertilization until natural death. They serve at the State House, they educate in classrooms, at events. They proudly serve on the coalition of pro-life leaders. They are on the front lines of the battle against this throwaway culture of death that we see all around us, and we are winning ground. Hearts and minds are changing, and the pro-life movement is continuing to grow. And you can be a part of the exciting things that are happening right here in our own backyard at pulseforlife.org and get your finger on the pro-life pulse. Sign up for their newsletter, find ways that you can make a difference, and how you can change hearts and minds with their pro-life apologetics course, pulseforlife.org.